Now, I've read some stupid ass articles on this channel, and I have read some extremely painful ones as well. While this isn't the most painful I've ever read, this might border on the stupidest. Especially because it seems to be an article that has counterpoints to its own argument in the article. And this was done completely unintentionally. The author just does not realize they are saying their own counterpoints. The article in question is Polygon's "In 2020, I Can No Longer Abide the 100-Hour RPG." And just by that title alone, you can tell why exactly I'm reading this. I make it no secret that I am a fan of RPGs, especially long-form RPGs. I find that, unfortunately, the modern standard for the genre seems to be just making them MMO lights. There's absolutely nothing in them but barren wastelands, a la Dragon Age Inquisition or Mass Effect Andromeda. It's very rare you actually see a filled, living world in RPGs anymore, which is why I like the classic isometric ones, because even for them being simpler, they seem to be fuller and more alive. But on to the wonderful article itself. Please, you can't make everything a side quest. And already we see the issue with this. You don't have to do every single side quest. If you don't want to do a side quest, you don't need to. They're usually, the way quests are usually labeled is, in modern RPGs, they will tell you it's a fucking side quest and not a main story quest, so you don't have to do it. You can ignore it if you want. Weird, isn't it? Do you know what's fantastic about The Outer Worlds? It's about 20 hours. Maybe a little more if you want to take your time with it. All of those 20 hours are a good time, and then the game's done. There's no more. I would argue that's bad. Going into that, I originally thought that Outer Worlds would be like a 40-hour game, not just 20, so that's actually made me reconsider if I want to buy Outer Worlds. Because I've heard that it's very well done story. It's a very tight story, and everything, all the controls, all that, it's very well done, especially by Obsidian standards, because they're known for bugs out the ass like Bethesda, but their games actually run. So I'm still willing to give them a shot, but hearing something like that is a turn-off for me rather than an instant sale for me. I wish more games would follow in Obsidian's footsteps here, because I'm realizing that I have no patience left for the 100+ hour RPG. See, and here seems to be the first major thing that this article has an issue with. This is this author's opinion. This is not what people, by and large, want. And the issue that I have with an article like this is that, for reasons that completely and totally escape me, the gaming industry still listens to the gaming media, no matter how irrelevant they have become. So if you, as a gaming author, are saying this, someone in games development will probably read it and say, oh, okay, society at large doesn't want longer games anymore. We have to make our games short. And that fucking terrifies me, that this could have some kind of effect on the industry at large. Do I think it's really going to? No. By itself, no. The problem is the gaming media has this habit of parroting each other to the point of nauseum. So if several more articles like this come out, that could have an effect. In a few years, we could see extremely short RPGs, the 20-hour RPG now being the standard rather than 40, 60 hours. Sometimes a game catches my attention, perhaps the combat looks excellent, or the protagonist seems cool, and then the hype train begins. Hundreds of hours of deep and complex quest content, the game promises. An ongoing narrative that requires your constant attention. You'll collect a party of characters you love like your own family, and choices you make can crop up 40 minutes later to devastate them. Every time I hear a game described in this way, I break out into a cold sweat. That's not exciting. That's a threat. Here's a point of order, and I'm going to be saying this several times throughout this article. You aren't describing an RPG. You're describing a live service game, and those are two very, very different beasts. Especially that part where hundreds of hours of deep and complex quest content that require an ongoing narrative that requires your constant attention. That is live service. That's not an RPG. A single-player RPG is usually, well, it's going to have a story and it's going to go on. In this day and age, they're usually open world or open world-ish. But otherwise, there is an end. It's not this you have to constantly play to keep up to date with things. That is a live service game. And somehow the author seems to have conflated these two to a point where they've actually straight mixed up the two later in the article. And you're going to see that. Those halcyon days of youth. When I was a teenager, I scraped together my first part-time job money for an Xbox 360 and a copy of Mass Effect. It was the first system I purchased with my own money, and I was hooked. I played Mass Effect 9 times before moving on to Dragon Age Origins and sinking about 120 hours into that as well. I devoured Fallout New Vegas the following year. After growing up on Nintendo and Blizzard products, I was blown away by these dense, carefully constructed worlds. Now, I would actually argue Blizzard is well known for that from this time frame that you're describing. It's only in the last 5-10-ish years that Blizzard has kind of fallen off the bandwagon. But that said, you're describing why people like these games, so I'm a bit confused what your argument is against them. I don't regret any of the time I spent with those games. To this day, they're some of my favorites. There's a certain level of emotional investment that comes from a long enough game. Take Fallout New Vegas. I still have very fond memories of when I awoke in Goodsprings and traversed across the Mojave Wasteland. I still remember the feeling of dread when I came across the lottery, and the hate I felt when I realized who was behind it. The brutal ranks of Caesar's Legion. And yes, I'm going to say Caesar here. A decade later, my buddies and I still swap stories about how our couriers ruined the Legion's day. My brother carefully collected Legion currency from around the map, smelted it down into bullets, and used a shotgun to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. I want to stop right here and actually say that's kind of creative and funny, the way that the author kind of blended in the title of that mission into that phrase. That's smart. I'll give him credit for that. I don't think you could actually do that in the game, but that was funny. I chose to bring my pal Boone into a camp and kill Caesar, then freed his crucified enemies into the heart of his Nevada vanguard, a sign of my utter contempt for his rule. These stories are amazing, and they're possible because they're propped up by so much scaffolding of character development, world building, dialogue trees, and so on. Playing a long RPG with tons of choices is fantastic, but it also feels like a luxury of youth. And here we go. I might knock out one or two over the Christmas holidays, but who has the time to play each big game as it comes out? You don't. You don't play each big game as they come out. The rest of the world is not the gaming media where that's a requirement. People buy the game that looks good to them, that they're interested in, that has the kind of genre or mechanics that they like. They don't buy each and every single fucking one. This seems to be the author, and you'll see this a couple times. The author has this weird idea that everyone is like them, that society at large is like this author where they have to play games all the time and they have to get through all of them, all of the big releases, that everyone wants to play everything. No, that's not how the world works. People like the small individual niche things that they like. And that's the problem with modern day gaming in general, is that they have this mentality of every game should be for everyone. And if you don't sell as much as Call of Duty, that's a failing on you rather than niches and subgenres existing for a reason. Not me, that's who. Listen, I'm old and stupid and tired. You won't hear me disagree with that. I have a bunch of MMORPG subscriptions going at various times to games like Star Wars The Old Republic and World of Warcraft, and every time I log into one of them after a few months off, I am immediately confused and frightened. Why do I have this grain? Where am I at progression-wise? What are these crystals in my inventory? Wait, how's my map rotate? What are all of these buttons? No one. No one does what you've just described. No one has several subscriptions to several different MMOs that they keep going. At most, people have 2 that they maybe flip back and forth between. I have never heard of any normal human being having several MMO subscriptions that they keep and then go back to after months. That is not a thing that happens. They may renew one after having canceled it for a few months, like when an expansion comes out, but that is not what is being described here. And that is just insanity that this author thinks that's the norm. Jumping back into a 100-hour RPG has the same effect, but worse, because at least MMORPGs anticipate that you'll take time off. Logging back into a massive story-driven RPG after taking a break to deal with real life is a nightmare. I have 50 markers on my map. One of my companions is mad at me because I did something somewhere. And this part I will agree with is I personally have this rule of if I stop playing a game for about 2 weeks, I start over because I will have forgotten so much about it. Some people, you could probably go a month and that would be your cutoff zone. But I digress. That's actually what you're kind of supposed to do, because you will forget what's going on, especially if you go into a different game for whatever reason. You will forget what's going on. You will forget the combat mechanics because every game is different. They aren't supposed to all be copy-pastes of each other. You will forget what the fuck is going on, and you will need to just have a refresher of some kind, or at the very least just start up a new game, play that for like 30 seconds, go, oh, okay, this is how everything works, and then jump back into your old save. At some point, I picked up 30 gems. Why do I have so many gems? Turns out I bought them en masse to give another companion every day, and I need to do that because I shattered the God Urn and trashed our relationship. Listen, I have enough trouble tracking my real-life social obligations and long-term grudges. I can't do it with a bunch of elves or space marines as well. Again, you are describing live service games. No single-player, story-driven RPG does something like this. Even for as much as I shit on Dragon Age Inquisition and Mass Effect Andromeda for having those missions or maps or whatever where you had to send people out for real-time things that actually continued as you logged off the game. For as much as I shit on those, it was nothing like what you were describing. What you were describing is the Anthem-style live service, and that's not an RPG. There is no world that Anthem is the 100-hour story-driven RPG. Now, The Outer Worlds certainly has some complex relationship stuff going on, but everything is tracked and recorded in my quest log, like any actual single-player RPG. And 20 hours isn't long enough for me to forget stuff established in the early game. If you keep playing the game from start to finish and don't break between 10 different other games, 100 hours isn't going to make you forget it either. It's the best of both worlds between a short game and a mega RPG, except it's kind of not. It feels too short at 20 hours. I just have stuff going on in real life that cuts down on my gaming time. It's literally my job to be involved in video games. And here's the problem. This person seems to be conflating their job playing video games with everyone actually making time in their life to play video games on their own free time. That is a huge difference here. This person does not seem to grasp this. I can't imagine how much worse it would be if I had an office job or if my husband and I had kids. You would, I'm going to say this again, you would learn how to ration your time and appreciate your gaming time more. Strange, isn't it? As it is, real life occasionally crashes over me and knocks me off my feet. How are people supposed to gobble down a 100-hour game in today's economy? Now, I find the use of the phrase in today's economy kind of weird because the whole point of that is how are you supposed to be able to afford something in today's economy, as in like physical afford? And that kind of counterpoints itself because the whole point of that is if you have a 100-hour RPG that doesn't have microtransactions, strange, I know, then that is more bang for your buck. That is better in today's economy. So again, you're countering your own point here with a phrase, I don't think you understand how it works. But be that as it may, let's pretend you're saying, how are people supposed to ration their time to that degree in today's go-go world? If we're not in the gaming industry and playing games as our living, we learn how to do that. If we don't have a job where we are doing what is considered a luxury or entertainment thing for work, then we learn how to ration our time off from work and further enjoy what free time we do get. Strange concept, I know, but work with me here. Games like Sea of Thieves and Warframe are much more based on session-to-session gameplay, or in Sea of Thieves' case, no gameplay. I've heard that it's gotten better, but Jesus Christ, there was absolutely nothing going on in that game. Warframe, I'll give them credit to, that actually is very much a session-to-session thing. There's no real overarching story in that game. It just is, you play it, you live it, congratulations, you're done. I don't remember many of my early adventures, and that's totally okay. Again, because neither of those games really tells you anything or does anything that would be worth remembering. It just is existing. Well, in Sea of Thieves' case, not so much, but I digress. For now, I think I'll be sticking to those online games or working on short stories here and there. The Outer Worlds was so deeply satisfying because it stayed in its 20-hour lane. I just wish more developers would follow suit. And again, you are complaining about live service games and MMOs. You are not complaining about RPGs. This author does not seem to understand this, and they seem to have made this article griping about something that they got wrong themselves. If you don't understand what a genre is and the differences between them, how the fuck are you in the video game media industry? But then again, I've looked at other video game media, and I think that I answered my own question. I'd like to thank Razorfist for making me aware of this article in a recent video of his, and every bit of pain that I feel right now is all on you, buddy. Something is wrong with the gaming media, and this article is like a perfect encapsulation of it. They don't understand what they're talking about. They assume they do, and then blame that thing that they assumed as the problem, and then they demand that things change to meet their desires, rather than, you know, them sticking to what they specifically like. This has had effects on the gaming industry, and I'm afraid that we're going to see more articles like this in the coming months and that is going to affect development in the coming years. I really, really hope that it doesn't, and I'm just overblowing that, but I have seen entire genres be completely redone off of things like this. So I'm desperately hoping I'm wrong here. To this author, all I have to say is learn what a fucking genre is, get it right, and complain about that, not a completely different genre that has done nothing wrong to you other than exist. Hey, this has been Math Machine, complaining that stupid people don't know genres and then write about video game genres. Peace out.